Moving through Europe, we come to Switzerland and John Hucker. John, you've got 5 minutes. You may begin.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity and thanks everybody for the interest. I'm a banker by background and wanted to indulge in a bit of storytelling because I think it really helps contextualize what's going on in Switzerland. And one of the themes for me that's really coming up time and time again is the dichotomy of threats and opportunities. And I think that's very true of Switzerland. So the story for me starts about 6 years ago. I resigned from my job at one of the two big Swiss banks. I was working in my hometown of Toronto. It was in the middle of the aftermath of the financial crisis, and they were being bailed out by the national government and looked to be in pretty bad shape. The opportunity for me at the same time was to go off and study in the UK for an MBA, which great experience. Very quickly, I was headed on my way to Switzerland to work with the other major Swiss bank. And I was really the only guy in my class who thought anything about going to Switzerland to work at a financial institution. And largely that was because of the end of an era. Not only does Switzerland face the impact of the financial crisis, which I think we all did, there was a unique point in history where our traditional value proposition was starting to erode, and that was around banking secrecy. And as an outsider who was new to the city, I started to get thrown into some really quite interesting projects. And if I were to characterize those, I would say it was a combination of regulatory and cost cutting. And stepping back for a moment and just looking at that simply, to me, it was being asked to do more with less. And right there, it was becoming clear to me that innovation was going to start to play a role. Moreover, with the idea of the value proposition being eroded, the whole topic of innovation started to seem like something that might be a point to hang on. And if you think about, again, what clients were doing and the way the world was shifting, again, it was clear that digitization and innovation was becoming a major theme. And when I contrasted my experience in London and what I was seeing in the Zurich Financial Center and the Swiss Financial Center, to me, it was quite frankly a bit of a vacuum. Everybody was used to a very successful, a very clear value proposition and way of doing business. The management and the whole industry had shaped around that. And now they were really very reactively adapting to things. So we had this view that there was potential and huge potential and opportunity around Switzerland. So a few of us started to connect the dots, and that's what manifested itself as FinTech Meetup Zurich, which was very much a lean startup and a way of testing the waters. And over the course of a year, it became clear that we really did have something powerful there. So last spring, we started to form a board of directors to help figure out what we were going to do next. And that took actually stakeholders from all different sides of the ecosystem, and also uniquely from the two poles of the Swiss Financial Center in Geneva and Zurich, which are a little subtly different. What we decided to do was create a hub for fintech in Switzerland, much like you see in London and other cities. It had to be neutral, it's not for profit, and really what we aimed to do was to connect the individual people from different sides of the equation. So that's now taking shape, and in our first few months we've launched a survey to help ground all of the thoughts about what's going on and where the opportunities are. We've hosted Switzerland's first major world-class fintech startup event, which was a great success and had the regulator involved as well. A few weeks later, they announced plans to open up doors and create a path for fintech startups. And then we've also now created the first directory and started to really shed light on an ecosystem that wasn't well understood. So actually, we're just getting started, and there's a lot more to come. But something that I think is interesting to note is what makes Switzerland unique. I think the real strength of Switzerland is its uniqueness. It's one of the leading financial centers globally, but it's different. It's not a global hub like London, New York, or Hong Kong, but it ranks just slightly below them because it's the world wealth management hub. It's also huge for insurance and a couple of other businesses around the alternative investment space, which make it quite unique. You have an incredible culture of innovation in Switzerland, maybe not yet in finance, but Switzerland is often ranked as the top innovation nation globally. You have a huge pool of wealth available in Switzerland. You also have a tremendous stability in terms of finance, regulation, and the legal framework there. Last but not least, I can say it's also a wonderful place to live, and it attracts people for all sorts of global companies from around Europe and around the world. So a really solid base. What that base has allowed Switzerland, I think, to create a real value proposition around for fintech are 5 pillars. I think the traditional one is international banking and wealth management. The other kind of anchor point is the insurance business. One of the ones that you might have heard of in the news is also crypto and blockchain, and how there's been a real community shaped around that. In fact, you've seen Zappo, a major Silicon Valley firm that's relocated some of its business to Switzerland for those reasons I've mentioned. Then actually turning a bit on its head banking secrecy, we have data security, which Switzerland again has a lot of the right things to be a real hub for. And last but not least, I think a bit of a wild card is financial inclusion and social finance. And really there's 3 points to that. It's about the world organizations, the history of philanthropy and wealth that flows through Switzerland, and also the need for a wealthy country to look to emerging markets for the sources of innovation. So I'm out of time, but if you'll indulge me, I think the point about FinTech hubs is that innovation happens outside of the banks. There's a war for talent, and how do you access those people? And as we're highlighting here today, different hubs offer different values to the banks. So that would be the end point for me.
All right, great. John, thank you. Which card would you like to share? Oh, you got
I
two.
want to use two. I mean, I wanted to say financial stability, which is the bedrock of the financial industry. But for me, I think it's really that dichotomy of having a threat and the need to pivot and figure out how we can be relevant in the future. That's the wild card that's going to make Switzerland so successful.
Great, thank you. All right.